We have some news that's just coming in. Prime Minister Mark Carney says Canada will not use energy or critical minerals as leverage in trade talks with the United States. Now, the Prime Minister made the remarks in an interview with the Canadian press. Carney said he doesn't consider those sectors as leverage since Canada is not talking about stopping any sort of existing trade. In the interview, Carney also said that he thinks the existing CUSMA agreement will largely remain intact through the upcoming negotiation process.
Something unexpected just happened between Canada and the US. Instead of playing tough, Canada changed the story in a calm but powerful way. This may look small, but it's not. If Canada stops focusing only on the US, it could unlock bigger gains, while the US could slowly lose a key partner it has always relied on. A week ago, Canada's Natural Resources Minister Tim Hodgson stood before a Toronto business audience and described Canada's energy and natural resources sector as Canada's strongest cards in the CUSMA renegotiation. 4 days later, US Trade Representative Jamieson Greer told a group of visiting Canadian politicians, trade envoys, and business people in Washington that Canada should not attempt to use its energy and mineral resources as leverage in discussions about renewing the Continental Free Trade Pact. And on Friday, May 1st, Prime Minister Mark Carney sat down for his first interview with the Canadian press since entering federal politics, the first in more than a year, and reframed the entire conversation in terms that cut through both Canadian ministerial framing and the American preemptive warning simultaneously. I reject that characterization of "it's leverage," Carney said. It's looking at, is it in our mutual interest to trade more? Where is it? And if it's not there, we have other options. That answer is more precise and more strategically significant than it might initially appear. Carney is not saying Canada will never use its energy and critical mineral position in negotiations. He is rejecting the word leverage as the frame through which that position should be understood. The distinction matters because leverage implies the threat of withholding the suggestion that Canada might cut off energy exports or refuse critical mineral contracts as a negotiating tactic. Carney is ruling out that specific framing. Canada honors its contracts and agreements. Canada is not talking about halting any trade with the United States. But then comes the question that contains the actual substance of Canada's position. Should we be further integrating our energy markets with the United States at a time they view that as, quote, leverage? That question is not rhetorical. It is the operational core of how Canada is approaching the CUSMA review on energy and critical minerals. The Trump administration has been explicit about its desire for deeper access to Canadian energy resources and critical mineral supply chains. The US is actively seeking to reduce dependence on China for battery minerals, rare earths, and the raw materials required for electric vehicle production and defense manufacturing. Canada holds the reserves, the mining infrastructure, and the processing potential that American industrial policy requires. The Trump administration wants that supply secured on favorable, deeply integrated terms. Carney's question, should Canada be further integrating with a country that views that integration as leverage over Canada, puts the entire American demand into a framework that inverts the pressure dynamic. Further integration, in Carney's framing, is not something Canada owes the United States as a natural consequence of proximity and existing trade flows. It is a decision about whether deeper commercial ties serve Canadian interests at this particular moment, with this particular administration, operating under this particular set of trade postures. The tariffs on steel, aluminum, automobiles, and forest products. The measures Carney has described as violations of the existing trade agreement are the context in which the United States is simultaneously demanding more Canadian energy and mineral access. Carney is asking, in public, whether those two things are compatible. Whether Canada should deepen the integration that Washington is treating as leverage, while Washington is using tariffs that violate the agreement through which that integration is supposed to operate. The interview, Carney's first extended on-record conversation with Canadian press since entering politics, covered the full scope of where the CUSMA negotiations stand from Canada's perspective. Carney expressed confidence that the existing agreement will largely survive its review. Much of it will be retained, he said. Some things are going to have to change, but we're looking to make sure they change in a way that's in Canada's interest. That framing change in Canada's interest is the consistent negotiating posture Carney has maintained throughout the conflict period. Canada is not opposing CUSMA renewal. Canada is not seeking to unravel the continental trade architecture. Canada wants changes that serve Canadian interests, embedded in a renewed agreement that both sides can commit to with credibility. On the question of how to deal with Trump personally, Carney offered an assessment built on a year of direct experience managing the bilateral relationship at the highest level. There is, I think, a misconception, maybe, or a view a number of people have formed, that the best way is to cloak things in different language and flattering language. Carney said, he's a tough negotiator. He has very strong views about what he wants. And so what's important is to find ways to communicate what Canada wants, what Canada expects, that's respectful, but also direct. That characterization of what works direct, respectful, clear about what Canada expects aligns with every public posture Carney has taken since taking office. From the Parliament Hill press conferences where he named CUSMA violations by category, to the single word response when asked whether Canada would pay an entry fee to access the negotiating table. The automobile market dimension of the energy conversation is embedded in Carney's comments as well. He described Canada's automotive sector as incredibly integrated with the United States, a sector that is at risk of being pulled apart by the US tariffs currently in place. The automobile supply chain crosses the Canada-US border multiple times before a finished vehicle is produced. The tariffs that violate the CUSMA side letters on automobiles are not incidental disruptions to a peripheral industry. They are active damage to one of the most deeply integrated cross-border manufacturing systems in North American economic history. Carney's refusal to further integrate energy markets under conditions where that integration is being treated as leverage by the same administration that is simultaneously damaging the automotive sector is a coherent and documented position, not a rhetorical gesture. Greer's preemptive warning to visiting Canadians in Washington that Canada should not attempt to use energy and minerals as leverage arrived 3 days before Carney gave his answer. The sequence is revealing. Washington went out of its way to warn Canada against a negotiating posture that Canada's own natural resources minister had publicly described as Canada's strongest cards. Carney's response rejected the leverage framing, while simultaneously raising the question of whether further energy integration serves Canadian interests at all. He did not accept Washington's framing. He did not accept his own minister's framing. He established a third frame, mutual interest, evaluated on its merits, with Canada retaining options if mutual interests cannot be established. Canadians honor their contracts and agreements. Canada is not stopping existing energy trade. But further integration, deeper entanglement of Canadian energy and mineral supply into American industrial policy is a question about mutual benefit, not a concession Canada owes in exchange for being allowed to negotiate. CUSMA stands the test of time. Much of it will be retained. What changes will change in Canada's interest. And the energy and mineral sectors are not leverage. They are options.